to Feminist Buzzkills, the show that is only weird about how much we love abortion. Liz is out on assignment, saving the world. I'm Moji and sitting in the co-host chair is AAF Programs Director, Kristin Haiti. Hi, Kristin.
Hi, Moji. I am so excited to be here. And today we are going to talk about our increasingly dysfunctional Supreme Court and what some electeds are trying to do about it. We are also going to talk about the Iowa abortion ban and the devastating ripple effects in the region.
Our guests are Trans Health Director at Kentucky Health Justice Network, Oliver Hall, to talk about finding and uplifting abortion care that addresses the needs of the trans community, and comedian, writer, and actor Sierra Katow joins us to talk about comedy, self-care, and as a bonus, she defines the word fun for us.
Ooh, on top of that, we absolutely have some July Patreon birthday shout outs, and that would be Lori Hursley and Elizabeth Liebenow. Both were July 1st. We are chronically late. Our apologies.
It's your birthday!
Happy birthday!
Woohoo! Guys, we have no August birthdays. So if you have an August birthday, you should sign up to the Patreon so we can shout you out.
And before we get to the BS, it is Olympic Summer Games time, and we've figured out how to tie one specific sport directly to abortion.
Oh my gosh, Kristin, this was so much fun to figure out. So it turns out we don't have Liz, so we're not going to do 6 degrees of abortion, but Kristin and I both together have both 1 and 2 degrees of abortion tied directly to the U.S. Olympic fencing team.
Yes. I think, Moji, you should start this.
I will. I have the 2 degrees of abortion, and it just so happens that my brother, my biological brother, who shares a mother with me, is an Olympic fencing coach and is in Paris at the games coaching the men's saber team. And so he's my brother. I am me. I work at AAF. Therefore, 2 degrees to abortion.
That is perfect. And does this mean he's now also all of our brothers, so we can all go to the Olympics?
That's exactly what that means, that he is the brother of AAF and everyone that is attached to us in any meaningful way. Absolutely. Yes.
Yes. Well, and speaking of fencing again, we have to talk about how the 1 degree separation, the amazing Lee Kiefer, who won an Olympic gold
yeah.
Right? Not just silver. I mean, silver bronze are great.
All of them are impressive.
Yes. Whole ass gold for fencing in the women's foil final. Well, guess what? This Lee, not only in 2021, she was among 500 athletes that signed an amicus brief asking SCOTUS to uphold abortion rights. She is a med student who volunteers with Kentucky Health Justice Network.
You mean an organization who we're talking to someone from just today?
Yes. What are the odds? The very same one.
I am shocked and flabbergasted and impressed by, if I'm honest, us, you and I, for knowing these people and being able to so comfortably and confidently say that we can speak for America and say that the United States fencing Olympic quality team is pro-abortion. And that's an exciting statement that you and I can say comfortably I think we speak for America when we say.
All of America. We are saying it definitively right here. So welcome.
USA. So that's super exciting. And Kristin, I'm impressed for us, you and I, and our connection to the Olympics.
Yeah, definitely. we clinched this. So good job, Team Kristin and Moji. Now we always have to transition to the big stories of the week. So Moji, what is going on with the Supreme Court?
Increasingly, the Supreme Court is just not as airtight as they used to be. Usually we have to imagine what Justices Thomas and Brown Jackson say when they decide the fate of voting rights. But the steps that got us to the recent Ohio EMTALA non-decision have actually been laid bare. It's crazy. Just to take you back a few scant months, in Moyle v. the United States, Idaho, the state, argued that the protections of the Federal Emergency Medical and Labor Act, or EMTALA, ran contrary to their state abortion ban and should not be enforceable. So this is wild. You remember this, right? EMTALA is basically the act that kind of keeps people who are bleeding out in an emergency room from dying. And it affects pregnant people, of course, but it basically is the reason that any hospital that accepts Medicaid needs to treat anybody who shows up, and they need to provide stabilizing care. So in January, our conservative justices were fully willing to let a state law trump a federal law, which is not normal. And they let this law go into effect while they, if I'm honest, they seem to pretend to deliberate, right? They were like, yep, 6 of us, we have the majority, we're going to do it.
Yes.
Just what happened is then when they did that, too many pregnant people were airlifted out of Idaho, on top of course, the people who bled out in a parking lot. And they were airlifted while risking organ failure, loss of fertility, and permanent disability because, say it with us now, abortion is healthcare. And it turned out what they needed was healthcare.
Imagine that. Also, pretty wild that we need a law to tell people to treat people that way.
Crazy, bonkers.
So during the hearing, the horrors of the law became super apparent, and Justice Barrett, of course, soon followed by Justice Roberts and Kavanaugh, decided that they were actually, if you can imagine, undecided, and that they had maybe been just a little bit hasty taking the case. So they sent it back to the lower court, and the rest of us have to wait a few years before the question is actually resolved for good, which sucks. Not the worst outcome. And yet, what's wild is that we know this.
The crazy part, how do we know all of these details?
We're not supposed to, but that's because the Supreme Court is leaky as hell. And besides the fact that they accidentally leaked the decision a day early on their own website.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. That's incredible. Right? I forgot that the day before we were like, here's a decision. And then they were like, yoink.
Well, there's been so many leaks. How can you keep track at this point anymore? But knowing blow by blow the back and forth between the justices is absolutely wild and indicative of just how dysfunctional things are in SCOTUS.
I mean, beyond the fact that we have what really does seem to be a rogue Supreme Court, it is wild that we have gotten details about this. And, you know, we all remember in 2022 when the months before it was decided, we got the leak of the Dobbs decision, which just let us know in advance, buckle up, Buttercup, you're not going to have abortion rights in this country any longer.
I was on a plane and I landed and the world was different.
Yep.
I think I flew into a different universe. This might be my fault. I'm so sorry, everybody.
I think I blame you, and you should stay off planes now. Drive everywhere. Thank you so much, Kristin.
All right, done.
What's wild is, okay, of course, like we all know this, like Supreme Court justices have lifetime appointments. And so we're looking at this 3-6, like conservative supermajority, and every year they just keep drumming out these like decisions that make no sense, that are not based in like what had come before. They make no sense. They don't seem reasonable. They just seem like they decide what they want to do when the case comes, and then they like retrofit whatever their decision is in there, even if it doesn't actually like fit with previous decisions, standards of law. The fuck can we do?
Well, it looks like finally some people on the top are asking the same question. So just this week, President Biden finally called for court reform, something he's been particularly silent on for the last 3.5 years. He's called for term limits and an enforceable code of ethics.
You know, if we had term limits, I hope they would retroactively push Alito and Thomas out immediately, because why do we need a code of ethics?
Well, maybe because Alito and Thomas have been wined and dined within an inch of their lives by billionaires with cases before the court that they've ruled favorably on. And let's not even start with Alito's creepy flag antics.
Oh my gosh, Alito's flag antics are freaking ridiculous. And it's wild that a neighbor was like, no. He's out here flying anti-American flags at his house, and I'm the only one who's speaking up about it. And he's been doing it since the January 6th insurrection. It's so bad that in early July, New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez actually filed articles of impeachment against those two and called them a threat to the rule of law. Because what? I mean, it's actually, wow, they do feel like a threat to the rule of law. So I want to just quickly go through the first one, which was against Justice Thomas. And in that, she said there were 3 points: failure to disclose financial income, gifts and reimbursements, property interests, liabilities, and transactions, among other information. She said, number two, refusal to recuse from matters concerning his spouse's legal interests in cases before the court, because we know Ginny Thomas, insurrectionist in chief, and also his refusal to recuse from matters involving his spouse's financial interests in cases before the court. And this is stuff that has been coming out in the news for the last few years. Like, this is not even surprising stuff.
No, it's not new. We have been talking about this for so long. All of this has been coming out.
And then what did she file against Alito?
So the second impeachment resolution includes the following against Alito. One, a refusal to recuse from cases in which he had a personal bias or prejudice concerning a party in cases before the court, and a failure to disclose financial income, gifts, and reimbursements, property interests, liabilities, and transactions, among other information.
Interesting that the thread between the two is the financial income, gifts, and reimbursements. Like it's almost like our Supreme Court has been bought and sold on a certain point with the older members sitting on the bench.
Unimaginable that people in power do unsavory things to benefit themselves.
Especially ones with lifetime appointments. What an easy cushion to be unscrupulous under. So this story has no real finale. We're all up in limbo with this, but it's just kind of a little update on the disarray in our SCOTUS and maybe a little hope that in the near future, we have a resolution to these things. What's going on in the corn-rich Hawkeye state? Kristin, more abortion access?
The exact opposite, actually. On Monday, Iowa's 6-week abortion ban officially took effect after their Supreme Court ruled last month in a 4-3 opinion that the ban could be enforced. Previously, abortion was legal up until about 22 weeks. Now, Iowa already borders 2 states, South Dakota and Missouri, with full abortion bans. And with adding this near total abortion ban going into effect this week, far more abortion seekers will be forced to travel farther distances to access care. And even before this ban went into effect, according to the Chicago Abortion Fund, in the first 3 weeks of July, they saw a 165% increase in call volume from Iowans.
165, that's huge. Is it people anticipating the ban, or was it, I don't know. It sounds like maybe people anticipating the ban. How would you know that?
Well, it feels like anytime and this is also purposeful, anytime you are talking about bans or restrictions in the news, whether or not they're in effect, people hear what they hear, and it creates a lot of confusion with people. So it's really common and deliberate.
Basically, the misinformation and the confusion is the point, that you just hear in a side that like there's a ban coming, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm not even going to call the local clinics. I'm just going to jump ahead to problem solving in another state.
Yep, it's real great all around, real great. Unfortunately, now 1 in 3 people who can get pregnant live in a state with an abortion ban, which is going to even further stretch capacity for clinics like those in bordering states, Illinois and Minnesota, who are already seeing increased patient appointments. And abortion and practical support funds will need to spend even more money to bypass all of the practical barriers to obtaining abortions out of state. Funds like Chicago Abortion Fund or Midwest Access Coalition or Iowa Abortion Access Fund.
Oh my God, that sucks. Also, Midwest Access Coalition, I just want to shout out Marie, friend of the pod.
Hearts for Marie forever.
Forever. You know, every state that reduces access creates a ripple effect that affects every abortion fund, regardless of their location. And more funds are basically, having to turn away callers and shut down for weeks at a time until they can raise money. This is an actual problem we have to deal with. I know you're involved in working with an abortion fund. Can you tell us about what's been happening in Ohio?
Absolutely. So I'm on the board of the Aggie Fund, which is an abortion fund here in Ohio. And for those that don't know, an abortion fund is a nonprofit that basically just meets the monetary needs for patients and helps get that money gap from the patient to the clinic. There are also practical support funds. And so what practical support funds do is they provide all of the other necessities for patients who have to travel. That is lodging, airfare, childcare, gas, all of those costs you don't think about beyond the cost of an abortion. So I know for my fund, the Aggie Fund in Ohio, around 2020, we really started to see an increased need in patients. And in about 3 years, we saw nearly a 1,400% increase in the amount of money that we were funding out for patients to get their abortions.
Whoa, where did that money come from?
Oh, well, there was a large outpouring after the Politico article dropped about the Roe leak and then when Roe fell. However, where is that money coming from now? Most of it comes from community support. It comes from bake sales that we hold at clinics or fundraisers at the local bars that have always been supportive. Really, abortion funds and practical support funds are mutual aid because it's money directly from the community that goes back out into the community.
So essentially, when states decide to ban abortion or severely restrict abortion, they are just taking healthcare out of the hands of healthcare professionals, out of insurance that's supposed to help us, and puts it in, not even in the hands, but the responsibility of lay citizens who are doing the best they can to keep alive.
Yeah, it's a really great system. It's working super well. We're all doing fine.
Oh my God, it sounds so fucked. So what's the plan in Iowa?
Well, to support, donate, donate, donate. I know it always sucks when the answer is money, but that is what makes the world go round. Donate to funds like the Iowa Abortion Access Fund and the Chicago Abortion Fund. And you can also directly support the providers, like one of our absolute favorite indies, the Emma Goldman Clinic in Iowa. You can donate directly to them. So your support and money means everything.
I just want to go back to Iowa also in general, because like this is so fucked. It's so terrified. I'm really horrified, and my heart goes out to the people of Iowa, but not just Iowa. Like there's 14 states again at this point who have restricted and severely restricted or banned abortion care, and it's not good, Bob.
No, it's not great. I mean, where are these people going to go? And it does create that ripple effect. So the abortion seekers in those states are going to try and go as close as you can. Eventually, those clinics will fill up. And then you are getting 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks behind, which makes the cost more. So then they start going outward. And that ripple affects clinics who may not be able to handle the capacity. It affects all of the abortion and practical funds that are now serving patients from across the country who are coming into their community just to access abortion care. It's an untenable and it's unsustainable, and something's got to give.
This is not that episode, but we definitely have talked about and will continue talking about things like ballot initiatives and et cetera. And of course, this Iowa ban just went into effect this week.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if everyone's mobilizing on the ground and figuring out what the next steps are to essentially restore or even expand the access that Iowans had as recently as last Friday. But this is heartbreaking.
It is. We're doing a real great job uplifting you all today. We're full of happy stories.
Well, as always, these stories will be in the show notes, and you can find the best, most up-to-the-minute resources on accessing abortion care and funding for your care on our website, aafront.org. Our Charlie chatbot on the bottom right will walk anyone, anywhere in the country through their options and resources for abortion. And we have someone coming up soon who knows a lot about finding and funding care. Kristin?
Our next guest serves as the Trans Health Director for Kentucky Health Justice Network, where they advocate for trans Kentuckians' access to health care. They are trans mask and Kentucky born. Please welcome Oliver Hall.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Oliver. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you here. We would love for you to first explain to our listeners what exactly Kentucky Health Justice Network does and what your role at the org is.
Yeah, absolutely. So KHJN is a reproductive justice organization. We have a couple different practical support programs. The first of which is an abortion fund, which also provides practical support to Kentuckians needing access to abortion. And then the program I manage is a trans health program, which provides practical support to trans Kentuckians accessing gender affirming care.
Your org sounds incredible. Oliver, can you talk about the unique challenges facing a trans person seeking an abortion? And also, what kind of biases come into play when trans folks are looking for abortion care?
Yeah, absolutely. So trans people do face a host of additional barriers when accessing abortion care. On the legal front, because trans people are more likely to live below the poverty line, things like an outright ban are even harder to overcome and get that out-of-state care. Things like insurance restrictions on abortion funding are going to also disproportionately affect trans people. And then things like parental involvement laws also tend to disproportionately affect trans youth who might have a strained relationship with their parents and therefore not be able to get parental consent. And then they might have to interact with the justice system, which is not often kind to trans people in order to overcome that lack of parental consent. But then there are also a host of institutional barriers within the medical industrial complex that make it even harder for trans people to access abortion. Mainly there, I'm thinking about the exclusionary language in pretty much everything related to abortion care. But I'm also thinking about the lack of understanding about the needs of trans patients. A lot of doctors don't have accurate knowledge about trans bodies or about transition related healthcare just because education about our needs is not prioritized. And then, you do have doctors with their own individual biases, which adds another level of interpersonal transphobia, which makes it really, really difficult, especially in something like abortion care, which is already stigmatized care in our country.
So like what can Kentucky Health Justice Network do in particular to like help someone overcome those like particular things? Like what can you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Because my program focuses mainly on like gender affirming care, I'm often not interacting with the patients who are seeking abortion care. But what we do try to do is educate clinics to make sure that they're providing trans competent services. And the other side of that is making sure that patients who are calling us are aware of what clinic they're going to. If we know a clinic has had transphobic providers in the past, that we're being honest with them. Hey, you might not have a good experience. This is the closest clinic. This might be the right option for you, but just being really clear about expectations so people aren't, coming in thinking, oh, this is a really like inclusive provider. I'm going to have a great experience. I think that's the most important part.
You mentioned education, and it really is such a key factor in everything that we do in all of your work. And so there's a lot of misinformation and manufactured hysteria about trans people and trans care. What do you feel is missed by the media when they talk about trans health?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like trans health is often talked about like it being a political football is the important part of the conversation, or that it is like a clue into more restrictions on bodily autonomy coming in the future. Like, oh, this is an escalation, it's going to continue. I think it's important to maybe draw the focus on the fact that it's killing trans people now. Like, what we have now is very, very bad. It's killing trans youth who can't access care. It's killing trans adults in my community who don't see a future, don't see it getting better. They see it getting worse, and it's already pretty bad. It's also leading to a culture of violence. It's fueling transphobic violence, not just on the internet, which people do focus on a lot, but in real life. I know in Kentucky, like there are a lot of places where trans people don't feel comfortable going out in public alone for fear of violence. And I think it's important to draw the focus onto those like real life consequences that we're already facing rather than like a theoretical future where things are even worse.
Yeah, it's wild when people basically abstract harm and it's like, oh, we don't need the abstract. We have an actual harm happening right now that we can point to and talk about. This is a fact that really surprised me. According to one study, the highest number of trans folks in the US live in the South, which is also where we have the most restrictive abortion policies. I don't know why that shocks me so much. With all the legislative attacks on both abortion and gender affirming care, what is at stake and what can we do?
Everything is at stake. I mean, I think bodily autonomy is paramount to our humanity. Being able to, have control over our bodies and have control over our futures is how we like make ourselves. That's how we are a person. We have choices that we get to make. So everything is at risk. I think we have to cast a wider net in our movements. I think we have to like really be intentional about making these connections, like the fact that HRT, gender affirming care in general, is really connected to abortion care, so that people who are already invested in one of those fights see that they are also invested in the other, because we need numbers. We need as many people as possible to be showing up and continuing to show up, to be invested in like this lifelong struggle. I think that's key. I think with that, the political power will follow, but first we need the people power.
a lot of people see these issues as mutually exclusive, but our liberation is really all entwined together, and we have to advocate for each other. And I'm thinking especially this year when we're seeing a lot of ballot initiatives and, legislative things happening across the country. And how can we all make sure that our advocacy is always inclusive of trans and gender expansive people? And what would you say to those who are willing to compromise on that to move their own agenda forward? That kind of the ends justify the means logic.
So to the first point, I think involving trans people in your organizing is the easiest way to do that. If you have trans people in the room where those decisions are being made, if you have a diverse group of people from a diverse set of experiences in the room making decisions, you're going to get better decisions. You're going to get stronger decisions that represent a wider portion of the population. Thinking specifically about like language, I think just being intentional about what language you're using, that you're using accurate language, you're using what is correct for what you're talking about. I see some people get stuck in the trap of saying things like, oh, I have to say people with uteruses now. Like, no one's telling you that. Just saying, like, say what you mean. If you mean abortion seekers, if you mean people, abortion patients, just say that. You don't have to kind of skirt around it and talk about uterus havers and avoid the word abortion, because that's also just going to contribute to abortion stigma. We can be honest. If you're talking about women specifically, you can say that. If you're talking about people who are affected by patriarchy, you can say that. So just being really intentional and making sure you're using the correct word for what you mean. I think just being clear in our communication is going to help us overall. To people who I guess would leave trans people behind, obviously history will not be on their side. It will not reflect kindly on them in the future. And I also don't think they're getting wins that way. I don't think that isolating a subset of the population is an effective political strategy. I don't think by compromising on key issues that we are actually getting anything. It's like we're compromising for the sake of a potential win in the future that just isn't coming. So maybe instead we should bring more people in if that's not working. And it isn't.
That's a fantastic point. And I remember going to a talk and, they made the point, and this was really revelatory for me, where they say polling, which is where so much of our messaging comes from, all of these campaigns, everything. Polling informs messaging, but it doesn't inform what you're actually working on. Your end goal that is informed by morals and social justice and what is right, and making sure that even with whatever the polling is, that still stays in line together. I love that point to remember that we always have to be inclusive.
I also love that point, both of your points that you've just made, because to me, it feels like we do win when we are together. And if you actually look at the coalitions that the people, when you actually look at what we want to accomplish and the people we need to accomplish with, building a coalition and making sure that everyone's there. Like, I don't want to be involved in a movement that excludes trans people, right? I don't want to be out of something that excludes them. And I just feel like if we look at all the people we want to build with, we all have to be there.
Yeah. From a practical perspective, when we have more shared political goals, when we see people who are invested in abortion are also invested in trans health, are also invested in reducing the Black maternal mortality rate, are also invested in birth justice as a whole, we have the opportunity to build more wins, which is going to get us more political power. So maybe we can't get a law that legalizes abortion nationwide today, but maybe we can get a bill that allocates some Medicaid funding for doulas, which we know access to doula care reduces the Black maternal mortality rate. So we can take that, we can build on that and, bring along the allies we made through that win. And that also is going to energize people to move forward. Whereas if we focus narrowly on abortion and we have this, we don't necessarily think about anything but, abortion legislation on a national level, it's going to get pretty demoralizing. We need those wins. We need to make progress where we can, even if, for some people, abortion is their main focus. You still have to find those wins in the meantime, I think.
Also, we all know that reproductive justice is not just about abortion. It's about the entirety of being human. It's being human. It's all of the parts that are being human. And also in even politically suffered in abortion access, they don't start nationally. They start locally, right? It was a Mississippi case that ended Roe v. Wade. And so we have to also, as people who are more progressive in our policies, just be a little more focused and also building, not just being reactive, but maybe being proactive in our coalitions about building the world we want to see, as opposed to just like reacting to the things that people who want a whole different world are trying to create and cram down our throats. Oliver, the time here goes really quickly, but before we go, is there anything else that you want to make sure that our listeners hear before you go?
Honestly, you all asked such great questions. I think I covered it, but I mean, I think the message is just to bring more people into the work. Consider coalitions that you haven't considered before. Consider people in the gender justice movement, part of coalitions for reproductive justice and vice versa, and just make sure we're collaborating whenever possible, because that's the way we're going to win.
Can you, before you go, also just tell us where people can find you and support the work that you do?
Yeah, our program social media is KY Trans Health on every platform. You can find me personally on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is Contraception Daddy, which has a fun backstory for another time.
How can people donate to Kentucky Health Justice?
We have a donation link on our page, which is just khjn.org. And you can even choose to allocate your donation to the abortion fund or the trans health program, or just trust us with the money and give it to us more broadly.
And we will make sure that all of these links are in our show notes and our listeners can follow them. Again, Oliver, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And as always, we are going to give you the reminder to donate to Kentucky Health Justice Network's Trans Health program. You can even select Trans Health Advocacy from the drop-down menu. Send them all of the money and all of the funds to continue doing the amazing work.
Links are in our show notes. Kristin, that was such a great conversation with Oliver. They were incredible.
They were so wonderful to talk to. And I always love chatting with people who really understand that we are all in this together and that our advocacy has to be inclusive of everyone, because that's the only way that we'll win.
Also, I think a little bit of my upcoming mantra, existing now, but definitely like strengthening, is that we can't discount people in the South and the Midwest, that just because a place has an abortion ban doesn't mean that we just need to write it off, that there are people on the ground who live there that are fighting and that are advocating and are doing the best they can for their community. And we should all be supporting them and recognizing that we're all in this fight together.
100%. Some of the absolute fierce and badass advocates I know are the folks that are doing it in the South and in the hard places that a lot of people write off. And that is where so much of our success and work is really going to come from.
It really is. Also, truly shocked when I read the statistic that most of our trans people are in the South. There's this I feel like this world is full of so much information, and there's this idea that oh, that's a liberal elite, a coastal thing. And it's no, it turns out it's a human thing. And a lot of humans live around this country and not just in New York and California and Minnesota.
It's incredible how often we forget that everyone are actually people and not just concepts and not just political slogans. Everyone exists in all of the places. Now, I know we've had a lot going on, but Moji, who's going to make us laugh today?
Woo! Well, it is about time to laugh, and making us laugh as a stand-up comic, writer, and actor who recently released her debut comedy special, Funt. Liz and I had a chat with her a little while ago, and it was so much fun. You may know her from the TV series, The Sex Life of College Girls on Max, and you can check out this clip.
I live very close to a anti-choice billboard. It says fingerprints at 9 weeks, which I guess means, the embryo has fingerprints identifiable to that embryo. At 9 weeks, maybe don't, do anything rash. But whenever I read that, I just think, if that embryo commits a crime, that can get traced back to me. That's 10 years to life, aiding and abetting, secondhand. No thanks, I better abort the shit out of that embryo. not taking any chances, okay?
Please welcome Sierra Katow. Welcome, Sierra.
Hey, Sierra.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. That clip was so funny. We, as an organization, are fully on board with mocking silly, creepy anti-choice billboards.
Yes.
Yeah.
They haunt me. I feel like they purposefully put them around me.
They're
see a lot
following
of
you.
Yeah. I mean, I drive a lot of places, I guess, but occasionally I'm like, hey, there's another like full baby on this billboard telling us to do stuff with our bodies.
I live part of the time in Brooklyn and part of the time in Minneapolis. And I drive across country when I come home. And you drive through Wisconsin and there are 5,000 of those billboards. And it's like a baby in a sailor hat. And you're like, sailor hat at 6 weeks. And you're like, and it's full teeth. And you're like, does it chew its way out of the womb? What is happening?
I couldn't sail ever. I'm, 29. I still haven't learned. So 6 weeks, man, pretty precocious.
Yeah. I mean, the baby is just, lifting the sail on the yard arm and just doing, I don't know if that's a thing.
Firing it all
words. Oh, that sounded
cylinders.
right
I'm
to
trying to
me.
get some reference in here. I don't know.
Starboard and port. That's all I know.
Yeah. Fetus board,
Oh, that's a
fetus
good
on
one.
board.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
fetus on board for
Get
sure.
the sticker. Get the waterproof sticker.
So, Sierra, you wasted your hard-earned college money being good at math, which is wild. I want to know, did your parents expect much more from you and your math degree?
Oh yeah. So, I got a fancy STEM, computer science thing going, and I think they were very supportive. I think overall, they were happy that I at least completed the degree and have, I used it, especially starting off in comedy when you don't make very much and you're trying to pay the bills. Like I was freelance coding, doing all that to support what I, would be my dreams. But I think overall, like I credit to them for trusting me and, giving me a place to fall back on if I ever, needed to. And I think I think overall it kind of worked out because of that, just having people that believe in you,
Also
Yes.
having the confidence to have a day job that you can know how to do in your sleep. So you're like, okay, I can really pursue my craft and not be totally starving.
Sure. Yeah. And I feel like it was all, it kind of gave me something to do and put my brain on that was different than comedy. If like the open mic went poorly or a show, then I would fully be able to be like, well, hey, at least I can, check some boxes over here in this kind of boring coding window, as nerdy as that sounds.
I love it. So you were at the Harvard Lampoon. You were the VP of the Harvard Lampoon, 2013, 2014. Do I have that right?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Let's see. Oh, wait, no, maybe a little after. I guess I graduated 2016, so it was like 2015-ish.
Because I was inducted into the Harvard Lampoon in
I
October of
remember.
2014. Do you?
Oh, yeah, I was there.
Oh my God.
You were?
Yeah, so I'm a big Liz Winstead fan, of course. So I was very excited to do this. Played it pretty cool, I hope. But yes, I remember I was a little young, kind of maybe a freshman or first or second year at the time. But yeah, it was very cool. I hope you had a good time.
I did. And it was so cool because when I got inducted, Alexis Wilkinson was the running the Harvard Lampoon,
Yes,
first Black woman ever. So it was super cool to get invited to do it then. And then they
Right.
put you through this crazy initiation that's really silly. I brought my whole family. It was like hilarious.
yeah.
People are like, what is even happening here? I was like, I don't know. I brought my family. But eons before that, when I was running the Daily Show, we had a no Harvard writer rule at the Daily Show where we would burn Harvard resumes. I'm telling you this because I adore you and you're so funny. But we
This is
would
great.
burn
Yeah.
Harvard resumes in a Folgers can I kept in my office. And because we were like, wait, if you could get your degree in funny, you can go work for Phil. You can go work for a myriad of
True.
Harvard men. So it was like, unless you were a woman who went to Harvard or one of the
Oh,
Ivies,
wow.
but we were just like, you know what, white guys with your Harvard funny degrees, maybe you should go work on, a myriad of other shows. Conan is hiring.
They'll find their spot somewhere. No, for sure. And I think even among recent grads, I think there's kind of this push to be like, let's branch out and like try to, work with or hire or whoever, champion people who haven't been able to kind of get that extra coaching and everything through college, right? Like it is such a tight network, I think, people are realizing like that's not the best thing for making good comedy too, you know.
I know. Well, it's funny too, because I'm a big fan of yours, and I'm a big fan of Sex Lives of College. I love college drama, I love any young people living their truth. And on that show, there was a fake Lampoon
Oh, yes,
storyline.
yes.
I wondered
Right.
if you worked on that fake Lampoon storyline about kind of just exploring sexism and all that stuff.
Oh my God. It was such an strange experience. So I was really just coming on as like an actor, you know, and I've written for shows, but I didn't write for that show. But I was brought on, I think kind of they knew that I had that experience too. So it was like, well, she's kind of been through this. And then as the plot unfolded, and I was also, you know, introduced to other characters or other actors they cast as like the guys in the Lampoon comp type thing, fictional. I was like, wow, it's as if they knew exactly what I went through. These men look like the boys that I was always like butting heads with. And yeah, they really captured it. And I think it just goes to show it's not just a Lampoon thing. It's like any woman who goes through something, or like specifically comedy groups, like there's kind of a archetype of experience. And especially if you're a woman going through it, I think a lot of the same battles are fought, a lot of the same arguments are made. So yeah, it was really funny to have lived through that and then acted in it. And you know, I really was doing the method thing before I realized it.
So you're saying that there's no diversity in the experience of white men in comedy? Is that what you're saying?
Interesting. I mean, I've never put it so perfectly, concisely, and accurately, but yes, I think so.
Turns out there's a lot of them that are there.
Yeah.
And they also would love to explain the joke you wrote so that you understand your meaning and what was behind it. And also, you know, that joke works on a couple different levels. I'm like, really?
Oh my
I only wrote one level. I'm so glad that you could excavate with your brilliant brain.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's like you know, somehow them saying it louder uncovers what actually makes it funny.
100%. 100%.
So, Sierra, let's get away from Harvard for a minute.
Sure. I try my best.
You have mentioned that you are probably turning 30 soon. And besides learning how to yacht like a fetus, is there anything else in your goals for this milestone year?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think a lot of it, you know, is comedy related. I've been doing stand up for maybe like 13 years if from the beginning when I first started at 16. So I think it's just evolved from like being a thing that I kind of was excited to do and like, you know, get outside of my shell. And now thinking about like how much the world has changed and figuring out how to do comedy within that. And like, obviously you two have figured that out a long time ago and are continuing to do it from my point of view. And for me, I think, yeah, learning how to like actually be deliberate a little bit about my comedy and what that'll look like kind of as, again, not just sort of a young person trying things out and like figuring out, you know, what it means in a larger context. So yeah, I think that's like always been a little bit in the back of my mind, but even more so, I think, as, you know, turning this corner.
You're like evolving to an elder statesman of the comedy world. That's what
Sure,
I'm
yes. Yeah, I like that title.
You know, my favorite comics are, I mean, there's plenty of men who are hilarious. Plenty of white dudes are funny, but my favorite comics are not them. And mostly it's because I feel like as women, and then when you pile on like the experiences that you have within, you know, gender, within race, within all of it, you do this because you need to, I feel like. And there's a lot of like deep dive, like you're special, you deep dive. You're looking at life through the lens of being an Asian American person, but also a woman, then just also observational in general. Like, I love to ask comics, when you are bringing your truth and like really trying to say something, you can end up in a pit of despair that is like intense because you're doing self-evaluation all the time. How do you do self-care and write jokes all at the same time? You know what I mean?
Oh gosh. Oh yeah. Yeah. Do you know? Anybody out there know how to figure that out yet? Yeah. I mean, yeah, of course. I think it's like, I want to take longer deliberate again breaks from it, because the name of the game is like, you got to get up all the time and you got to always be writing new stuff. And yeah, the actual living of life in order to then take a step back and understand what we're doing and what we're making fun of sometimes falls by the wayside. So yeah, I think I am trying to figure that out for sure, and letting myself, take some breaks so that that can happen. And like, hopefully by pausing, there is, something that comes out of that, even if it feels like standing still.
Right.
So we've referred to it a couple times. We haven't talked about it. Your first special, Funt, just came out. Now, Liz and I have often referred to each other as funts, but we thought it meant fun cunts. And we didn't know that fun aunt was another interpretation of that portmanteau. So can you talk a little bit about the special and what our listeners should expect when they go and view it?
Oh, amazing. Yes. I think fun cunt is a definite, like, I think that's a go-to as well. I think you can be fun. You can make fun whatever you want it to be. But yes, in this particular case, I used
Except Fun Hunter. I feel like,
oh, yeah. Maybe
let's not go on a funt. No.
Yeah. No. I think this special has just been, kind of my first hour-long comedy special that I put out there. So it was really quite a culmination of a lot of years of jokes and where I was at the time of recording and everything like that. So it's been fun to put it out there and kind of like see. I feel, for me, vulnerable in it. So it's been interesting to see how, even people I don't know so well, I'm like, well, now you know me pretty well, if you watch that. And I try, there's jokes that I'm really proud of in there. So it's been really like exciting to see kind of the experience of putting a larger chunk together and putting it out there. And yeah, I think it's a great way to get to know where I was and where I am in my life, talk about the self-care versus funny comedy stuff. Like that's all kind of in there. And yeah, I'm very proud of it. So I hope to continue to like put out more stuff in the future.
It's so good. I mean, it really is a special that there is so much in it, social issues, you bringing yourself to life in all of the ways that you walk the earth and that you embody, which is super great. And so I want to ask last question. What do you do for fun? What is it that you do for fun?
Not just for fun, but also for fun.
Not for fun, for fun.
Well, I gotta incorporate a little funt in the fun, because I recently, because funt in this case was fun aunt, and I have a little nephew. I love to go hang out with my sister and my nephew, and that's kind of like family. Luckily for me, is all kind of local. In my special too, a lot of my parents and my sister were in the audience. My uncle was in the audience. Like a lot of great family support. And again, they've been with me on this journey the whole time, being luckily supportive despite maybe not being the most useful of my degree. But overall, I think that I am lucky that they're nearby so that I can go hang and, go. Recently, my nephew's now 2.5. And I was like, there was like a little block party. He's running around on his bike. He's a little guy. And I'm like, making sure he's safe because the cars are coming and stuff. So just making sure everything is okay. And he looks at me, he's like, go away, go away. He wants his space. He's already independent. He's already going off to college. I'm like, you're two. I'm going to watch over you. Okay. Gosh. But anyway, it's been a fun, I think, just that's kind of how I get to take a little break from all the comedy stuff, is like, actually get to see family and be a helicopter auntie. So
Awesome.
You're just funting all over the place. That's what you're saying.
All up and down. Yeah, for sure. So that's the best moment right now.
Tell folks where they can find you. Are you out on tour? What's going on?
Oh, yes. So I think I'm mainly in LA, but you can see I have my website, sierrakatow.com, for show dates. Katow spelled Katow. Check out, of course, my special Funt also on my website, or you can go to my Instagram at Sierra Katow, also TikTok, all the same name. And then I think I also have a fun podcast called Top Chef Fantasy League that I do with a couple friends, where we watch Top Chef and just gab about it. So, if you're also into that kind of thing, hey, I love to podcast.
So food.
So yeah.
Food is your thing. You kind of left out food.
Does that count? I mean, everybody loves food, but I love food.
Food is a personality trait.
But also, there are people, I have found this out. So, Sierra, I love to cook and I love to bake, but I found out that there's people who do not do that, but they love watching cooking shows.
Interesting.
That's like watching golf.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd have to take interest.
Yeah. Do you like to cook?
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like whenever I watch a cooking show, I immediately get hungry. So it's like, well, I can't just magically food appear, pull it out of the TV. I got to kind of learn something. It's never as good as what it looks like, of course. But yeah, for sure.
Oh my God.
Fire up the old, the old stove and walk.
I love a Top Chef pod.
Oh, yes.
I do as well. Yeah. How to miss a Top Chef pod. I'm really excited about that.
Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Subscribe to the Top Chef pod. Listen to Sierra just railing against all things that are, vaginal crossing guards. Let's tamp them down and get them gone. We're so glad you could come, and we're so glad that you had time to share with us. And I'm so glad you were there when I got inducted into the
hell yeah,
into the Harvard Lampoon. That is just so special.
Pretty incredible.
Amazing. Full circle,
Full circle.
But yes, thank you so much for having me on. Obviously a big fan of the podcast. So thanks again.
Well, we're going to all funt it up.
Hell yeah.
Thanks, Sierra. Check out her podcast, TV Chef Fantasy League, wherever you pod. And if you missed out on watching The Sex Lives of College Girls, you can stream the show on Max. And of course, please watch Sierra's comedy special, Front, now streaming on Amazon Prime. You can check out her tour dates and more info on her official website, sierrakatow.com.
And that is our show. Thank you so much.
What?
I know it flew by, right?
Whoa.
Thank you all so much for listening. And thanks again to Oliver Hall. And be sure to donate to KHJN's Trans Health Program.
Did we make you smarter? Make you laugh today? Then show us some love by liking, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star rating. Plus, stay connected with us on social media at Abortion Front across all platforms. With your help, we can get more people to learn about this assault on abortion access.
One thing you can do now is demand our legislators repeal the Comstock Act, a long-forgotten 1800s relic revived as a dangerous weapon against abortion access. Initially created by Anthony Comstock to suppress what he deemed obscene materials, this act could be used to halt the distribution of birth control and abortion information. We have to act now. Visit aafront.org/Comstock Act and sign our petition today. And are you looking for where you might fit in to do some abortion activism? We've got a 5-part activist training series, Operation Save Abortion, at operationsaveabortion.com. And while you're there, visit our super cool activist calendar, which is full of local and national actions and educational opportunities. One of those opportunities is on August 6th from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Reproductive Freedom for All is hosting a virtual training on how to host a rally. They'll be educating folks on best practices on how to host a rally, and you can RSVP for this month's skills training to prepare for the organizing year ahead. The link can be found in our activist calendar.
Abortion Access Front is going to Chicago for a week of activism at the Democratic National Convention and kicking it off Monday, August 19th with a show at the Metro called L'Abortion Variety Hour, a cavalcade of cooch. It's a throwback variety show packed with music, comedy, and burlesque. All the things that could be banned after this election. So if you're going to be in Chicago, you're going to want to check it out. And if you can't be there, consider buying a ticket for an abortion provider. Tickets at aafront.org/variety show.
Next week, we will be preparing for the DNC, but look out for an encore episode to drop on Friday.
And join our Patreon. You'll support great content and get cool FBK merch and experiences. Leos, Virgos, where are you? I want an August birthday to shout out. All pledges support this pod and all of our activism at Abortion Access Front. Pledge at patreon.com/feminist buzzkills. FBK is edited by Remedy Tournay and is produced by Abortion Access Front.
And finally, we leave you with Hate Pastor Joel Webbin, a man showing us his whole ass and his vision for a far-right hellscape.
A true revival of the American populace in the heart, what it would then look like in the application of the political, it would look like millions of people being deported.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It would look like mothers getting death row for murdering their children.
Feminist Buzzkills, the podcast from Abortion Access Front. New episodes drop Friday. When BS is poppin', we pop off. And if you want to support our podcast and all the work of Abortion Access Front, like, subscribe, and join our Patreon at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills.
I'm Allison Gill, that's AG from Mueller, She Wrote in the Daily Beans, the premier podcaster for all things special counsel.
And I'm Andrew McCabe, former acting director of the FBI and unlucky guy who was right in the middle of getting Robert Mueller appointed special counsel in 2017.
And we're joining forces to document the investigations of Trump by the newly appointed special counsel Jack Smith as it happens.
Whether it's analyzing court filings, letters, indictments, or prosecution and defense strategies,
or asking questions about special counsel regulations, rules governing classified documents at trial, or the scope of the probes,
we'll be here first thing Sunday mornings to cover the latest breaking special counsel news and answer your questions with the assistance of some of the best experts out there.
So follow, rate, and subscribe to Jack wherever you get your podcasts, your only source for all things special counsel.